and everything's perfect. No, right? Nothing can go wrong. You got it bought into the business, right? Nobody's laughing anymore. It made you tired, right? Well, you still do have to talk to the developers. So this is a little what we were talking about earlier. This is something I actually made. I wish I had a laser pointer. So I designed this thing. Autocomplete is inline. And by the way, this is a development team I perfectly like. I still work with them. So they're nice guys, so I'm glad they didn't come to the conference. But you type in this your URL, and it autocompletes inline like it should for a web browser. And I get back by the way, the production one, because there were some mismatches, and that's what happens when you type it. Full page view. Doesn't make a damn bit of sense. Nobody gets it. Why? Mismatches, disconnects, didn't kind of follow the point of things. So basically, a lot of the stuff I was just talking about didn't happen. It got communicated internally to the team. The business owners understood. As soon as I pointed out this is a bug, they went, well, yeah, of course. Oops, so I can't believe we missed that. But the developers never got connected to it. So you need to do the same exact thing to get those tied in. And I started using this is my local buzzword, but nobody really reads my blog, so nobody else has said it. So started thinking about it in that sense. Keep people thinking of user-centered execution. I have another word I was using for that thing. Briefly, I was trying to, at least internally repurpose the gulf of execution is now not the difference between a stimulus and a response, but the part where the gap between your document and what comes out the other end. But I like this better. Same thing, agenda slide. There's some simple steps you can do that have worked out well for me. So this is what we were talking about a little earlier as far as work with the development teams. There's a couple basic things, and these again took me years to do, much like going to art school made me able to be aware of why I'm designing things and defend the designs in public. Did some terrible interactions with development for years, and finally, got in the same building with them, got invited to meetings, got everything worked out. But I had to do some of this by even trial and error, essentially, because there are no people really writing books about how UX designers should work with developers. So there are hints, but that's about it. One of the first ones is even waterfall, even throw it over the wall, well, at least put a note on the brick you threw over the wall. That literally my first one is some slide, front, back, don't care, preferably every page actually, because you'd be surprised how many times I've been in software planning meetings where the guys take the deck and rip pages out of it. And you design pages 22 and 23. Thanks. They don't get the rest of the deck. They designed those components. Well, so if you do this, eventually you get phone calls at 2 a.m. from Bombay or something because they forgot there's a time zone difference, and even though they're dialing +1, and you get to answer questions from guys you've never met, never heard of. And it works. It works great. They go, oh, that's exactly the same thing I was saying earlier. That's much easier. I thought you wanted me to do all this ridiculous processing and stuff. No, just that. Okay, great. You solve problems. You're there. Ideally, you have a direct relationship, and this sometimes takes time, but you have a direct relationship with what I've generally called, and some places call them, development managers. They have a zillion other names, but whoever is supposed to ideally who is actually doing the software design and interacting with the team, but at least whoever is interfacing between the business side of the world and the development side of the world. Sometimes, depending on the organization, they're different people, or there's 3 or 4 people there. In my ideal world, you're even at things like software design meetings. They all sit around and have to break up the thing. And by the way, if they aren't doing software design as an explicit task, then that's another problem that you probably need to work out, and you kind of can't because you're not in development. Which is another good point, actually, as far as my understanding of this stuff. When I managed a team of UX guys at a giant telecom, we were inexplicably inside IT. So, bugs were assigned to the team, and we had to report on them, and metrics the same way, and all that stuff. So I've seen this process internally, and although it was harrowing and awful at the time, it helped inform everything, so now later on I can talk from that point of view, so that's nice. Anyway, even if you're not literally part of the implementation team, pretend you are, believe you are, internalize that you are part of the implementation team. And that also helps a lot of times because UX design stuff isn't necessarily perceived as being in any organization. If you kind of almost do ad hoc user testing on people and ask them pointed questions carefully when they're not paying attention, you find out the business thinks that you're closely aligned to implementation, to development side, and the developers think you're definitely marketing guys and so forth. You're not anywhere, so you might as well act like a bridge to people and align, and as the project moves along, move with the project. When it's being implemented, you're on the implementation team. Not literally, but at least believe it. So, the other one, remember early on I said, and I'm sure everybody else has said this, it's a good thing, set goals. So you do that, you talk to the business and you ask them questions, and out of that you come up with design objectives and turn those into goals for the project. If you have that kind of ability to do so, turn them into goals for the enterprise. Next quarter, we're going to increase sales because of this app is going to encourage them, whatever. Lost the ability to talk like that. Set goals like that so people work towards them. Because if otherwise, they're going to work towards every developer must code 6,000 lines every day, or some other stupid metrics that don't help you at all. If you can set goals to the project, then that's pretty easy, by the way. Because nobody wants, one of my tricks here, nobody likes writing requirements documentation, or pretty much any documentation. If you help out, you can kind of put anything you want in there. As long as you don't use it for evil, that works out fine. Nobody minds. You show it to them, you explain it, and very rarely does anybody want to remove things like, oh, here are the goals for our project. Or government, academic, corporate. They have to meet those. They're now written down. Somebody signed the last sheet of paper and said, this is what we're doing. Great, now you have essentially, usually, UX goals baked into the thing. Don't forget to make sure you can measure them. A lot of people like to forget that stuff. Nobody wants to build analytics in there, so make sure you can. If you have problems getting your head around that because it sounds boring, remember you might not get user testing, or you only get one facet of it. Analytics are another great tool to understand what's actually going on. Boring to get them implemented, but it's important. Back to patterns, essentially, again. I like calling this object-oriented design. Object-oriented means something, to certain teams at least, something incredibly specific in development. It kind of started in development, or it started in development. But I like the way it sounds, so at least internally I say that. Modular reuse is kind of a nice generic term that I use. So even right there on my legend on this spec, it says modular widgets. Yay, works great. These are project level patterns. They can be derived directly from universal patterns, or at least your corporate patterns. You define them, and I can explain this diagram if anybody's not following what they're looking at there. You define them in that way, and the development team can now, as long as you communicate what you're doing, can now assign not page K1 groups to a developer. They'll assign a developer to build that and that and that, because those are all kind of the same. And those get reused on 20 pages in the site. Now you're not building pages, you're building components. It's more efficient. You are sure that the same component is the same everywhere. Instead of just looking the same, it's literally the same component. You can probably almost immediately figure out why that's good in a lot of ways. The other thing is, as far as the working with development, they're now happy. You show them this, and they just cut 20%, 60% off their coding effort. So they thought they had to build 300 views of this thing. You go, no, it's just like 11 widgets that we just recombine. Oh, okay, great. I lied. It's 6 widgets, but half of them have multiple views. Polymorphism is one of my favorite words to annoy everybody with when I throw out big words. Just means things have multiple states of being. They're plastic, they're fluid. So this is an information lookup tool, actually, for a mobile phone. Both of these are a particular pill and or a particular drug, and one of them is almost empty, and one of them has ready to have their order picked up. It's the same component. There's like 6 versions of this component. But we didn't draw a completely different screen for each one of these things. We didn't have just a bug pop up and then you have to go to an actual whole new page, which would be kind of the thing that happened in the original design. Used a single component and has all these little modular variations to things. Ridiculously easy for the developers to build. So they built one basic one in a couple hours, and they spent about 20 minutes on each of the variations, instead of having to build up page after page after page for every component. There's all kinds of, like I said, benefits for development side of that, about for testing, for maintenance, and when you get into mobile, especially, oftentimes for storage. The size of the app can be a quarter the size if you design it the right way. And I'm sure a lot of people run into size limits, especially if you're trying to bring a bunch of data along with it. Having the app be a few hundred K instead of 5 megs helps a lot with that kind of stuff. And that's it. Summary. Make your design principles be project principles. Work the whole thing, work the whole project from the moment you get in an idea, maybe even through the sales process, but I'm not really a salesman, but all the way through development the way that you would pursue any design. Design holistically, design with components, be aware of what you're designing and why, get ready to buy in, and own the design all the way through. I think that's it. Yep. More questions? Come on, somebody else must have something. More cookies? Make sure you're more awake. So like I said, you can bug me. I got all my information up here. I don't know if the slides won't be distributed, I'll stick this on SlideShare anyway. So if you know my name, easy to find me. I'm the only Stephen Hoober in like the world, so the first 70 or 80 results are me. If you don't remember stuff and want to scribble it down, I have, no, there they are, versions of my card with info on the book and stuff. So if you're wondering where the wiki is, come up and grab one of these and put it in your wallet so you can do it. You can bring that home.
When is your book due out?
They don't give me a lot of information. Kind of like the reason I don't know why it's a lovebird. It's being edited now. It's in the middle of its 6-week edit process. I think we're 3 or 4 weeks into it, which means I need to do some of the stuff in the appendices. So when I mentioned the UI libraries and stuff, I have to write all that stuff to be not internet style and more book style. Like stuff like, I have weird articles like, I couldn't find a single thing in a single place, anything reasonable and readable about color deficits, color blindness, especially not from a designer point of view. So I had to go and do a bunch of research and consolidate one, write one essentially. So I got to kind of rewrite that and mostly try to remember where I got all the information from because I just wrote it for the internet, so I didn't actually put any references, which could be bad. So I got to rewrite some of that stuff. So I gather from the original plan like 2 months from now or so, maybe 3. This year for sure though. Yeah, I wish I had, like I said, I wish there was like, it was like a little further along and I had at least a crappy pre-production copy or something, but it was a little thick to like staple up a fake one, and so I couldn't quite figure that out. I remember Spalding Gray did that once on a tour. He was like, brought his book in progress and it was like that thick, stapled up in a big cardboard box with duct tape all over it, and I thought that was impressive. All I got is the box of phones. Terrific. Parts of it, actually. The development stuff less. The design concept stuff is somewhat in there. A lot of it's cut back more because it's part of the editing thing. It didn't necessarily meet the style of the book, but there's introductory sections in there that cover a lot of this basic stuff. The concept of the heuristic solution less so. But anyway, this whole thing is essentially summarized in one place. Certain bits like best practice have a whole kind of mini chapter, very short one, it'll be probably 5 pages printed and stuff like that. So I do some of this in summary everywhere. And like I said, I'll put this up on my SlideShare if nothing else. And if I don't, somebody remind me. Go, what the hell? Come on, you said you're going to post it. So I'm sure there's something I forgot to say, but there you go. Okay. And there's, I guess I ended early, so there's no float people here.